Hi, you're with Scott. This is Battery Exhausted, my vlog. This is vegan time. It's midnight, it's always midnight. This is your right ear, this is your left ear. Going to do a quick vegan video about pets. I'd like to point out that I'm not making any notes or anything like that. This is just off the top of my head. So if there's any subject that I miss out or get confused with or whatever, or if there's something that you've commented about pets that I've missed out, then comment again or whatever, you know. Sorry. But yeah, this is without notes, just a little bit of ramble about veganism and pets. Some ideas. What did they say? Like food for thought? Stuff like that. Let's do pets. Let's do veganism and pets. So, obviously I've got a dog. And I'm a vegan. How does that work? My personal belief is that as humans, we should not be breeding animals in captivity for our own benefit. I have a rescue dog because we overbreed animals for our own pleasure, and there's not enough homes for them all to live in. People don't always understand what it will be like to keep an animal, and you know, I don't have to go over this, do I? We all know that people get dogs, give them up, they end up in shelters. People have too many puppies they didn't realise or whatever. The dog might not fit into the lifestyle. It might be more difficult. It might bite. You know, there's loads of reasons why dogs end up homeless, essentially. And so, whilst we've got an abundance of animals that require homes, I feel it's unethical to be breeding more and creating an industry, because ultimately people breed dogs for sale and they make money out of it, so it's an industry. I don't think any animal-based industry is ethical. So that's, you know, a vegan perspective. Dogs are interesting, aren't they? Because we've become, I'm not going to use the word symbiotic, even though I just did. Symbiotic means that you need each other to live on it. You know, you live in the environment of and with another animal, and you know you require the other animal to live, you know, a symbiotic relationship. But we don't both, you know, I don't need that dog to survive anymore. Absolutely not. It used to be in history that we put dogs to task. We used them as tools, as allies, as aids in lots of different ways, and we still do. And there is something to be said for guide dogs for the blind, for example. Although it doesn't seem vegan to be having an animal that you own as a tool, you know, but there is something to be said for that. And I think even as a vegan, I can accept that we can breed dogs for purpose because of this historical, actually, even as I'm saying it, it sounds wrong. I think in the modern world, we don't breed animals and keep them for purpose as vegans. We just don't do it. All the good that's done by sniffer dogs and by guide dogs and stuff, maybe in the real world, is not the top of my vegan priority list. And I think it, you know, it has so many benefits that it's a very difficult area to discuss and draw for strong lines around. So, you know, maybe that's good. What I will say about that is that, you know, I've got a dog and I understand dogs, and because of this breeding for purpose over the history, even though we don't need it now in modern times, dogs, whilst we don't need dogs, dogs do need us. And if I let my dog wild in the wild, he'd probably die. He'd probably fail to feed himself. He'd probably be a victim of his environment. Certainly the human elements of the environment. He'd get hit by a car. You know, he wouldn't be able to survive, because we've created an animal or a type of animal. You know, we've bred the species of dog, we've honed it and changed it to become dependent on us. So it would be unethical for us to then not offer those dogs the support network, the home, the food, the walks, you know, and I'm going to use the word discipline, and the discipline that they require. Discipline in dogs is a very interesting topic. I've got books. Where is he? Caesar. He's up here on my bookshelf. I know he is. There he is. If you want to get into all that, dog psychology, Caesar's the man to ask. Caesar has spent a lifetime working with and studying dogs, and I've spent some 20 years learning about and understanding the psychology of dogs myself, not to the same level as people like Caesar or Dr. David Appleby, who we went and visited once. Because we did used to have a difficult dog when I was a kid. My dad chose to have the dog. It was difficult. We went to see the dog psychologist. So I learned that dogs as a pack animal, they, in their natural hierarchy, you know, in the wild, as a wolf, because all dogs are 99% wolf, I learned that wolves in the natural environment have a hierarchy. They have an alpha male, an alpha pair, often an alpha female, and that hierarchy creates stability within the wolf's psychology. So a dog without a leader has to become lead dog. And if the dog in your home, if you don't understand how it thinks, and it is in a position to believe it has to be the leader, the protector, then it creates a very imbalanced psychological profile for the dog, because it's not capable of feeding everyone. Where do people go when they go out? How can I protect them? And, you know, I'm not going to get deep into that, but all I'm saying is that even though I'm a vegan, I believe that when dogs are part of your life or part of our lives, because we've created that situation in the past and now we've got the hangover from that we shouldn't be breeding new ones, but the dogs that we do have, we should be caring for in the best way for the dog, and that does involve an element of discipline. My dog also involves learning tricks. I call them tricks. They're tasks, behaviours. He enjoys repeating the behaviours that get the reward. It's mentally stimulating for him, and so I've taught him an array of different things, which are actually quite helpful things to me as a handler, to lie down, to stay, but also not so alien from the sort of, I'm going to use the word commands, that the alpha dogs would give to the subordinates in the pack. So it's not completely unnatural for him to behave in those ways and to have that behaviour rewarded. But I can see that people might say, you're a vegan and you're making your dog do things. So, you know, I can understand that. But it's for his benefit, ultimately. And if I didn't think it was for his benefit, I wouldn't do it. But ultimately, having that element of interesting play in the day, you know, doing that regularly with him, it both builds up a good disciplined dog that I can readily control off a lead, which I haven't got to that yet. But, you know, it enhances that relationship we have, and also it means that he's getting stimulation and using his brain. So that's the dog thing. So overall, veganism and dogs, shouldn't be breeding new ones, with the exception of guide dogs, working dogs, not for hunting, not working dogs in that aspect, but we still have roles that dogs, canine beings, are better at performing than humans. And so the dogs themselves see a quality of life through that practice. So it's a grey area, but I'm going to say, for me as a vegan, I'm not averse to the breeding of guide dogs, the training of guide dogs, although it's worth mentioning that in that process there are a lot of dogs that don't make it, and so maybe that process, that industry might not be vegan. And I am, you know, I'm telling you now, I'm not certain. I'm not saying I definitely think this or I definitely think that, but thankfully I don't have to make all the decisions in the world, do I? And this is a video for you to think about. The whole point of all my vegan videos is to discuss ideas and to raise ideas, and I'm not telling you what to think. So for me, that's dogs. We should take all the rescue dogs we can. If you want a dog, you know, it's not as clear cut and simple as saying go to the rescue and get one. You know, there's a lot more to think about than that. But there are a lot of dogs who need homes, and it seems wrong to be breeding fun dogs like a particular kind of breed because I like the way its face or any of that, when there's a lot of dogs that need homes. Okay, so that's dogs. Cats. Cats are difficult, aren't they, because they kill other animals. So not vegan. And I myself have got a cat, which again I didn't buy. It theoretically is a rescue cat, and I I'm happy to offer the cat a place in my home. I love caring for the animal. You know, I give it its food, and we have a relationship. You know, I stroke the cat, it comes and says hello to me and stuff like that. But essentially, I let the cat do what it wants. I let it in and I let it out, and it lives in the environment. So that's quite vegan. The feeding of the animals is something that's a difficult issue. We're going to come on to that in a bit, okay? So don't think I've forgotten that. But the cat doesn't eat vegan. And other than me feeding it, taking it to the vets, making sure that it's healthy, giving it affection and a place to live, you know, I don't have to do much with the cat. Oh yeah, I have to rescue those animals when it half kills them, doesn't it? Yeah. But I do have a cat. Again, I didn't buy it. So I didn't put any money into an industry that relies on the breeding of animals. When I was a kid, I did have a hamster. I had a couple of hamsters. I had stick insects. All this was before I was vegan. I talked about the hamster in my WeirDTube video for Tiny Hamster World. Probably not vegan. I discussed that in that video. But what I wanted to say about all that experience was that it taught me to care for and respect animals. And so whilst keeping them captive in my home was not vegan, there was something beneficial to come out of it. In my opinion, keeping hamsters, keeping rabbits, keeping like stick insects, snakes, lizards, name it, rats, whatever, if you have to keep them caged in order to prevent them from escaping, essentially, and if you're creating a life that wouldn't survive, I'm thinking about lizards and snakes now, that wouldn't survive in our natural environment, so they're confined to the environment you provide for them, I don't think that's vegan. I just said that I did it when I was a kid, and I just said that there were lots of beneficial things to come out of it in my thinking, in my ideology, because of being close to that animal. But ultimately, I don't think it's vegan to be perpetuating that idea, and to be there are other bad things that come out of the ownership of the animal like that. One is that I considered myself to be the owner of the animal, instead of it having its own life and its own choices, and it reinforced and perpetuated ideas, you know, as a child that I didn't understand were being created and enforced by my owning the animal. So ownership of animals in that way, I think, is wrong, vegan, you know, from a vegan angle. And I know I'm talking to the vegan community when I say this. I've seen it on Facebook. Loads of people have got rats, they've got lizards, I've got a dog. You know, there's lots of different animals that people own, and they're vegans. So I know that I'm going to offend or upset people when I say this, but, you know, don't be offended or upset. I'm just saying what I think is appropriate for, you know, in my understanding of veganism, which is that we shouldn't breed animals for sale. We shouldn't breed animals to create an industry. We shouldn't keep animals outside of their natural habitats. We shouldn't keep animals for our own pleasure. Yeah, I think that kind of covers it. And like I said, you know, if you've already got an animal before you were vegan and have become vegan, obviously you're not going to get rid of it to a shelter. There's a lot to be said for an animal having a good life with someone who cares for it. And if you're taking animals' welfare into account, then, you know, there's a lot to be said positively for your caring of that animal, and the fact that the animal itself doesn't live a shittier life, which is an option if someone else buys it or it ends up, you know, thrown out on the street or whatever. But I don't think it's vegan to go into a pet shop and paying money for an animal. That's not vegan. An interesting point is that I've seen vegans who go to the pet shops and buy animals to release, be it fish or be it crickets or anything. And the idea being that those animals are going to be fed to other animals, or they're going to, you know, end up caged for the rest of their life. So it's better to buy them and release them. But the problem with that is that as soon as you buy them, their little stock counter goes and they order another one. So all you're doing is making more and encouraging them to make more by feeding into their economy, into their profits. So whilst on a nuts and bolts level, that particular animal might get a better life if you release it, on a meta issue, it doesn't help, it does the opposite, it makes it worse for other animals. So I believe that going into pet shops and spending money is bad, yeah? And then we come on to my own problem, which is that I've got a dog and I've got a cat, and I mean, we're talking about pets here, yeah? So I'm not going to expand into horses or bigger animals. That when we're talking about pets, I'm literally referring to animals that you keep in your home, that you don't have to do an awful lot. Although with the dog, you do have to do a lot, but you don't have to do an awful lot of animal husbandry. You know, you're not owning a farm, you've just got a house and an animal within it. And if you've got any different pets that I haven't thought of that need covering in this sort of discussion, then comment, maybe I'll come back to it in another video, or it can be discussed in the comments, okay? So horses is a different issue. I will make a video about horses, another video. But I think it's generally wrong to be putting money into that system. But I've got a dog and I've got a cat, I rescued them. And whilst that's noble and it, you know, means they don't have such a shitty life, the B side to that, the dark side to it, number one, it's still an industry. So I've still paid the rescue to receive my dog. And if the rescue is a charity, that's great. But if there were no dogs, if there were no dogs needing homes, if they were completely successful and they rehomed all the dogs, they would not exist. So somewhere along the lines, all those people are getting paid within that industry because the rescue dogs exist. And it worries me that it might not be that me, Mr. Good person, aren't I? Good person, comes along and tries to do something good by giving a dog a good home. But what worries me is that, you know, that might just be a marketing ploy so that they can make money off the people who want to do something good, essentially. And that the means to stop stray dogs, the means to stop dogs going in the shelter, you know, whatever needs to be done in that aspect is not being focused on by those charities. Because if they did stop their source, then they wouldn't have a business, essentially. You know, I worry about that, okay? I'm not saying it's what goes on, I'm just saying it's something that I worry about. Certainly there are different qualities of dog charity, and it has been brought to my attention in the past that there are people with no license or with no qualification who set up Facebook groups to find lost dogs, and it might well be they're just stealing dogs, you know, and then, oh, I found your dog, or whatever. You know, it benefits them. If you've always got to look in all these things as a vegan, as a person, at who it benefits. At who it benefits, who benefits from it. And like with the ASMR, you know, does it benefit the vulnerable people to be watching the ASMR, or does it benefit the ASMR artists to have a pool of vulnerable people? You know, does it, in this instance, does it benefit the dog charities to rehome the dogs, or does it benefit them to have dogs to rehome? You know, so I worry about those things. But the worst issue with having the dog and the cat is the feeding them, because certainly for a cat, I'm going to start with the cat. Certainly with the cat, it's a carnivorous animal that hunts. So for me to feed it a fully vegan diet would seem on the surface to be unethical in ways. You know, I'm preventing it from living its natural life and maybe not giving it the nutrition that it needs. And as vegans, we understand that nutrition is a transient idea, that simply because you remove animal flesh from your diet doesn't mean that you can't receive the right nutrition. And I think it's really ironic, just going to rubber stamp here as well, it's really ironic that all this discussion of nutrition goes on and yet nobody really knows. Like before the vegan issue came up, none of these people were saying like, oh, I'm Mr. Nutrition and I know everything that goes in my body from A to Z, and I know how it goes in my body and what it does when it's in there. Not even the top scientists know everything about nutrition, do they? So people who were previously uninterested in nutrition, they just take the surface level, what it says on the back of the packet, you know, look at the fat or the salt, whatever. They're not doing biology degrees, are they? They're not that concerned with nutrition. But when it comes to veganism, suddenly everyone's got an opinion on nutrition. You can't do it, protein. So it's interesting, isn't it? And maybe with the animals, there is a way of giving them the correct nutrition without having to resort to killing animals to feed them. Yeah, maybe that's the case. I haven't investigated it yet, and I'm pretty sure that other people have, and I will be, you know, in the comments people will say, oh, there's this and there's this, and I have actually, in truth, I've done a bit of research, and I have had some success with the dog food, finding vegan food for the dog. One point I'd like to make before I get onto the dog is the cat. The cat food is made from byproduct. So nobody's killing an animal to feed my cat. They're killing animals to feed all these people or to make their products or whatever. And then the byproduct of that is they've got all this other stuff that is waste, and they churn it up and then call it cat food. So it's not, it sounds bad for me as a vegan to say it, but my buying the animal product to feed the cat is not directly feeding in to the animal product industry, I feel, because it's a byproduct, it's their waste. So yes, I'm helping them by giving them profit, but the cat food company is not the people slaughtering the animals, you know. And if we all went vegan and there was no animal slaughter, the cat food company would very quickly either have to start slaughtering animals or find an alternative source for their product, which, if we were all vegans, would probably be vegan. Okay, but the dog, yeah, there are vegan dog foods out there, and maybe I should be feeding my dog a vegan diet. As I said, my dog's a rescue dog. He's very old now. He's in the twilight years of dog years. He's about 11 or 12. He's got a greying face. He's eaten a particular diet majority of his life, and in these later years we have had to change to a diet because he's getting allergies and his ear gets all horrible, and I'm sure he's allergic to certain grains. So we've had to try him on different diets to try and alleviate that suffering, his ear infections. And we found something that I feel, yeah, to be honest, it's one of these, you know, slightly fancy foods that does contain animal products, but I feel it's the best thing for his ear infections, right? So now I could take the next step and find vegan dog food for him and experiment with it. Oh look, ironically, while I'm talking about these pets, I need to go and let them in and out. So I could go and find a vegan dog food for him, but it would mean changing his diet another time, maybe more times, if the vegan dog food that I select re-irritates his ear infection. And like I said, you know, he's in his twilight years. It may not be that I'm buying dog food for the next 10 years, you know, that might not, well, after Navy, I'm pretty sure I will get another dog. But hey, yeah, so what I'm saying is the next dog, we can start off vegan, but I'm not really feeling that making my rescue dog, who's lived a difficult life all his life and has finally found a food that works for him, that he enjoys and doesn't irritate his ear, I'm not feeling that at 11, 12 years old I want to start messing with his diet again, especially as I've got lots of things on my vegan agenda that I need to start doing. I need to find ways of sourcing my produce from vegans. You know, I think that's higher on my agenda than sourcing my dog's food. You know, we can debate that. You can debate that. You might think that it's more important what I feed my dog as to where I buy my stuff. Who knows, you know? But for me, that's how I feel. So, fair enough. Hello, cat. Shakima, don't scratch that chair. So, to conclude, vegans love animals. That's why we don't want to eat them. I completely understand that you love animals to the point that you want to own them. If that's the case, I really, really think that there are many great things you can do by rescuing animals, certainly for the animals. Taking a dog into your home, taking a cat into your home, a rabbit, whatever, when it's already been bred and thrown away or cast off. Certainly, that's definitely a good thing to do. I believe the buying of animals through industry that breeds or creates them so we can buy them, I think that's wrong. Don't think that's vegan at all, and I don't think we should be doing it. The perpetuation of those ideas is important too. So So that's what I think. And I hope that answers some questions, you know. As always, comments, whatever. Click like and subscribe. I never say that, do I? So yeah, just been a bit of a vegan video about pets, hasn't it? Be good, my little Pukkos. Be good.